Mike, I've got a question for you, and it's one that I think is something that's relatable to most project managers and most PMOs, because I don't think anyone really has a satisfactory answer for this. When you track benefits, usually if you're doing a project that's going to improve efficiencies, so you're bringing in a new process so that someone's time, less of it is spent doing that process. And the calculation is usually time is money, and you round it all that up, however many people are impacted, however much time is impacted, and you get a great big dollar figure at the end, and you say, this is the financial benefit. But that benefit would only be realized if you stop those people from doing work in that time. So maybe it would round up to a person being made redundant, and there's a cost saving on salary there. Or what's more likely, though, is that person will just be reallocated to higher value work. In which case, then you might have a productivity benefit. And then it looks like you're double counting your benefits. Have you found a solution for this dilemma?
Yes. I mean, the easy answer to it is actually don't be doing with partial full-time equivalents. It is nonsense. Nobody ever realizes the partial full-time equivalents, because in principle, look, if the organization says, look, we can change the process, so actually we only need half of Stuart's time and we only need half of Mike's time, then that's a full-time equivalent saving. Bish bash bosh, that's, £30 a week or whatever, and that's done. Except they're not going to sack you and they're not going to sack me, because there's no legitimate way to do that unless they're pretty harsh. And the reality is they won't. So what they'll do is they'll redeploy us with make work usually. So unless you can be really hard about it, don't get into partial full-time equivalents. It really never works. I think that's the key. But if you are going to do it, I think there's some really important things. First, you do need to create a very rigorous database of your benefits and evaluate them financially, and make sure you've got the data. And for that to work, you've got to have a baseline. You've got to know what your people are doing and what they will be doing afterwards. So that's the basic thing. But how do you actually make that work? Well, I think the two really important suggestions. One is the Pareto Principle. Whereas when we create budgets, we say, collect all of the costs and make sure every single cost is on your budget, and then add some contingency. When you collect benefits, put every benefit that you can think of in your benefits register, but do not build your business case on all of your benefits. Build your business case using the Pareto Principle, the top 20% of benefits that deliver 80% of the benefit. Because if you have to build your business case to make it work, to actually show a net benefit by going to the last dregs of benefit, then it's too marginal anyway. Because any shift in reality, all it's ever going to do is increase your costs and reduce your benefits. So if you need to rely on the last few little bits of benefit, your business case is going to fail, and you shouldn't be doing that. So that's the first tip. But the really big one, the absolute big one, is ownership. Who owns each benefit? And I'll give you an example that we did with a client. We got each of the department. This was a implementation of huge enterprise resource planning software implementation, and all the top tier C-suite directors were saying, "We need this. This is great. This is exactly what we need." So we got each of those directors to ask their teams to develop the benefits case for them. But what we said was that those benefits cases were going to become board minutes, and they were going to be tracked at board level and exposed to main board and potentially therefore to shareholders. And we got a meeting, and I remember my client, and I use this in my training. We got all the top tier people, and my client, who was also a director of the organization, not a main board director, and he sat them around a table and he said, "Here are the copies of the consolidated business cases," and he handed them all out. And he said to them, "Look, check your section to make sure you're happy that the content of your section is what your team have created and what you have signed off for them to submit to us as the savings your business unit, your function will generate if you get this.
Okay.
And they all said, yep, that's fine. This is it. And what Clayton did then, we'd rehearsed it. He said, this is my copy of it. I'm now going to pass it around, and I'd like each of you to sign the cover to acknowledge this. And I will then submit that as a board minute. And that really focuses minds, because then each of the directors who were responsible for that actually were accountable for the benefits they created. They knew that, they didn't know they were going to be made to sign it, but they knew they were going to have to authorize that. That really focused their minds on making sure they knew how they were going to generate that benefit, because they were going to be held to account by the chief executive and other senior people. So that's my tip. Make people absolutely accountable for the benefits they claim. And interestingly, one of those directors, his department massively overperformed on benefits. And I spoke to him afterwards, and he said, I knew we were going to overperform, but there was no way I was going to claim everything, because the reason we overperformed was not all to do with that software. We just used that software implementation as a lever to start clearing house. Okay. So accountability is number one, and my subsidiary one is the Pareto Principle. Everything else, that's in the 80% of ideas I've got that will only contribute 20% of your success.
I love the idea that at the end of a project where someone said, okay, this is going to generate so many financial benefits, that someone from finance phones up and says, when are you going to send it over to us, because we've spent it?
Yeah, absolutely. But it wasn't someone from finance. It was the finance director at board level saying, well, Mr. Omer's procurement director, where's your savings?
Fantastic. Yeah. So if somebody's already gone past that point and they've signed up, they've had a business case signed off with what might have some fantasy figures of this sort in there, I'm guessing really change control is the way forward to actually then bring forward the true benefits, and that I'd call out the difference, certainly before the end of the project. Yeah. So that, you can at least be talking openly and honestly before you get to that point and disappoint everybody.
If you've got that business case, the first thing to do is to allocate the benefits to individuals within that benefits case, and then ask them to check, say, is there double counting in there? Because you're going to be held accountable for that. The other thing is to say, well, is this team actually claiming the same benefit as that team? So you're then looking for overlaps between teams. That's where, people will say, so for example, you might have procurement saying, well, we're going to, if we get this change, we're going to process fewer invoices, which means we don't need as big a procurement team. We're going to process fewer contracts. Finance is saying, well, we'll process fewer invoices, so we don't need as big a finance team. On the face of it, that's fine. But then if they're somehow assuming that they're getting benefits from each other, that it's those overlaps that are the messy things. So that's what I would do. And again, I would strip out, or at least challenge firmly, any partial FTEs. If this is if you're claiming 5 people because you've got 10 people who are going to go half time, that's not going to happen. You might get rid of 1 or 2 realistically, and you're not going to get rid of them on day one. You're not going to just fire them. You're just not going to replace them when they leave. And that could be weeks, months, years. And and I know that the people who will leave are not the people you most want to leave. They're the ones actually you would like to replace, because they're the best people. Yeah. So true. It's very true. Yeah. Headcount is the hardest one to realize. And I learned that back in the early 1990s when we were actually building effectively business cases for the abolition of county councils and the merger of district councils into unitaries, or vice versa. And we were doing paper exercises on how much council budgets would be for unitary authorities. And we had to decide what we were going to do with all the thousands of partial FTEs, fractional FTEs that we had. Because you can't just say, well, we're losing half a head in highways and we're losing half a head in sports and recreation, and just say, well, okay, well, someone can do half their time in highways and half the time sports and recreation. It's nonsense. So just go through the whole thing. But number one, get people accountable. The other thing is just strip out the small benefits that anyone's claiming, and just say those are no longer part of the business case. It'd be nice if we get them, but we're not predicating our permissions on this. And you know what you might have to do? You might have to stop the project. You might have to realize that actually there's not enough in it.
Well, that'll be another video then.
Yeah, how to stop a project. I shall look forward to that one.
Thank you ever so much, Mike. Appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure.
If that was helpful, don't forget to hit the like button, and don't forget to visit Mike's channel, Online PM Courses. I've got one of my favorite videos of his up here, so you might want to go and check that out, and definitely go and subscribe to his channel. And if you get a chance, then you might want to go and visit this one. This is one of my favorite videos from myself. Why not check that out? And YouTube seems to think you're going to like that one. I've got no idea what it is. Give it a try.